Why don't you swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon?
I remember my parents waking me up and we went down and we watched you guys land on the moon,
No, you didn't.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Powdered over the top of all that, make it look like a lunar landscape.
Word to God that you walked on the moon.
See, you associated what you saw. You watched animation.
Did we really go to the moon? This is like the original conspiracy theory, right? Why haven't we gone back? Did we even go in the first place? Well, today we're going to dig into all of that because recently Google's own neural network deemed NASA's photos of the moon landing as fake. And that clip has basically been scrubbed from the internet, but I have it for you. And I've also got a whole lot more than that. Today we're going to be looking at the evidence. So we've got the strange timeline of things that just don't seem to add up at all. The astronauts that seem like hostages rather than heroes, as well as the AI clip that we're going to be looking at. We're going to be doing our own image and video analysis of footage of the moon landings. We're going to be looking at the times that NASA themselves have seemingly slipped up on camera. And we're going to be finishing it off with a deathbed confession that basically admits to the hoax. Now, hopefully, at the end of this video, we're going to answer that question. Why haven't we gone back to the moon, or did we even go at all? By the way, my name is Josh. Welcome to Polarity if you're new. Let's just get straight into this one. So, as I said, the strange timeline is first. We're going to look at the things that don't make sense. We're going to look at some of SpaceX's statistics with obviously far superior computing power and technology, and we're going to weigh it up against NASA and the Apollo program. So let's kick it off with SpaceX, right? Elon Musk, we're going to be focusing on the Starship program, which is running from 2021 to today. So far, over the 4 years, they have launched 11 rockets and they've had 8 total failures, okay? And this is a quote here from Elon himself, where he says that the moon landing is a historical anomaly. So let's take a look at NASA now. So this is the Apollo program actually ran, I think, to 1972, but it took them 8 years from the beginning of Apollo to land on the moon. So in that 8 years, 21 total launches, 0 failures. So let's put them up next to each other, right? Basically, the Apollo program has ran double the length of time that SpaceX's Starship program has ran. They've basically launched almost double the amount of rockets. You would think they'd probably have somewhere around double the amount of failures, right? Well, no, they've actually had 0, apparently. So this already starts to look a little bit strange, right? Especially when we compare the computing power. Now, obviously, a caveat here is the fact that Elon Musk's rockets are aiming to be reusable, okay? So they have different goals. But given this stark difference in computing power, and we're going to go into it deep, it does seem a little bit strange. So let's have a look at the modern iPhone, the iPhone 15, 3.78 gigahertz of CPU speed, 12 gigabytes of RAM, 1 terabyte of storage or up to, and a fully touchscreen UI with AI built into it. Now let's compare that to the AGC, which is the Apollo guidance computer, which is basically the computer that put man on the moon. This had a 1 megahertz CPU or a 0.001 gigahertz CPU speed. So this is like a snail compared to a Formula One car, literally. 2 kilobytes of RAM compared to 12 gigabytes and 32 kilobytes of read-only memory for storage. And now this is probably just a lot of numbers for some people. So to try and give you an understanding of that, you couldn't even store an emoji on that. You wouldn't fit an emoji on there. Any picture you take with your iPhone is probably about 60 times bigger than that. Okay, you wouldn't even fit an eighth of an iPhone photo on the computer that put man on the moon. Just to try and give you some perspective here, if these kind of computer stuff isn't your thing. And obviously the interface was just a numeric keypad. So just like the 1 to 9 that you have on a phone, that's it. No screen. So roughly that equates to about 58 million times more powerful your iPhone is than the Apollo computer. Or the Apollo computer is less powerful than a modern calculator. So this here is when Elon Musk has talked about going to the moon. And when saying that it was a historical anomaly, he said if Starship was to go to the moon, it would take roughly 27,000 tons of fuel. Now, again, Starship is a reusable rocket, which the Apollo mission, the Saturn V, was not. So again, there's different requirements. But if Starship was to go to the moon, They would launch Starship up into orbit, and then they would require roughly 8 other rockets to launch up into orbit and top it up with fuel before it would have enough fuel to go to the moon from there and come back as a reusable rocket. Now, the Apollo missions did this with obviously a single-use rocket, which was just designed for one mission, and it required 2,700 tons of fuel. So by the way, we're talking like in the millions of liters here, millions and millions of liters. And the way they did this with such a lower amount of fuel is with a trans-lunar injection, which pushed the rocket or the shuttle into lunar orbit insertion. So the trans-lunar injection was basically a thing that the Saturn V rocket would dock into in space and then basically just aim it at the moon and just slingshot it there at about 39,000 kilometers per hour or 24,000 miles per hour. Now, what's crazy about this is this translunar injection method was never tested without a live crew on board. The first time it was used, it had live people on board. Now, if your calculations are off, you're going to miss the moon and you're just going to keep going in space because there's no gravity and, see you later. You're never coming back. Or if you do hit the moon correctly, but you've done it too fast, then you might crash or you might miss the lunar orbit insertion. Or if you go too slow, you might crash as well, right? This has to be like perfect and people's lives are at stakes. And it was never tested, apparently, without people on board. So what's crazy about this, though, is obviously Apollo 11 is the mission that famously Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong landed on the moon for the first time. But Apollo 8 and 10 before that actually got to the moon. So Apollo 8 got to the moon, did the translunar injection, orbited the moon 10 times, and came back. Apollo 10 did the same, and it descended within like 100 kilometers of the surface and went back. And then 11 was the one that actually landed. And then 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17 all apparently landed too. So we've actually been to the moon 9 times, twice before the famous one. And, arguably, getting to the moon, getting out of low Earth orbit into outer space and to the moon is arguably like the hardest part, is this nailing this translunar injection. Once you're in the moon's orbit and you've done the lunar orbit insertion, I'm not saying it's easy from there, but you basically just have to navigate your way down to the surface. Now, obviously, I'm not an astronaut, but I think the hardest part, you have to go through the Van Allen belt, which is a belt of radiation that surrounds the Earth, through that translunar injection. Okay, so I think that is kind of the hard part. And we apparently did it 9 times in a span of 3 years. So that's from 1969 to 1972. So already things are sounding a little strange, right? We've actually been to the moon 9 times, and 7 of them we actually set foot and landed on them. We did it twice before that. In a span of 3 years, we did that in 3 years. 9 times we went to the moon with computers less powerful than a calculator. So with that being said, let's take a look at the people that did it, right? The people that, well, let's look at these pictures. Here we've got 2 pictures. One of them is a group of people who went further than any man has ever been. The greatest achievement of mankind, setting foot on the moon, basically the frontier. They are the Christopher Columbus of modern time, right? And then in the other picture, you have people who got stuck in space for nearly 9 months. Now, the moon mission took 8 days, by the way. So one of these people, greatest achievement of all time on an 8-day mission, there and back, no problems. The other ones were stuck in space for 9 months due to a mission that went wrong. And they didn't do anything special. Which one's which, do you think, just from looking at those photos? We're actually going to look at these clips, okay? So we've got about a minute of each one just to kind of, compare and take a look at the body language, the way they're speaking. Let's check it out.
Astronauts Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, Edwin Aldrin. Neil?
It was our pleasure to have participated in one great adventure. It's an adventure that took place not just in the month of July, but rather one that took place in the last decade. We all here and the people listening in today had the opportunity to share that adventure over its developing and unfolding in the past months and years. It's our privilege today to share with you some of the details of that final month of July that was certainly the highlight for the three of us of that decade.
Don't get too excited, Neil. Look, I feel sorry for Neil Armstrong, and I'm going to get into that a little bit more. But before we talk about that, let's take a look at the other clip first.
Thank you for your time today.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Can I call you Sonny?
Sonny, yep.
Butch, okay?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
How well did you guys know each other before you went to space?
We've known each other for a couple decades.
Just a few decades.
A couple decades.
Is that right?
Yeah, back to our test pilot school days.
Yeah, so back in the 90s, we were both at Patuxent River, Maryland.
You were about to retire.
Well, I was thinking about it.
And this is the call you got.
Yeah, I've been in the Navy both of us have been in the Navy for a while, retired from that and switched over to civil service, and knew I wanted to fly in space one more time, and as a tester, both of us, this was the dream assignment.
I'm going to give that a shot. And NASA said, thank you very much, but we don't need you right now. So several applications later, I finally wore them down, so yeah.
Okay. Well done.
Yeah.
I can see that side of you.
Interesting, right? So, like I said, I feel sorry for Neil Armstrong. And let's talk about why. So Neil Armstrong, first man on the moon, he's the one with the famous quote, "One small step for man, giant leap for mankind." But after that, did we ever really hear from him? Like, you don't really. Google Neil Armstrong, Google images. You won't really find a photo of him from after this. It's kind of weird. Buzz Aldrin, though, second man on the moon, he's all over the shop, does all the interviews, does all the photos. He's the guy, but he wasn't the first man on the moon. So why is that? Why is that? Well, if you go back to the first clip that we looked at there of these guys when they just came back from the moon, look at Buzz Aldrin. You were probably focused on Neil in that clip because he's the one speaking, but look at Buzz Aldrin. He looks like a man on a mission, especially compared to Neil. He is back up straight, like head down, eyes laser focused forward. Like, it's like he's got a bit of G.I. Joe about him. Whereas Neil Armstrong looks deflated. He sounds deflated. His shoulders are slumped. He's got long pauses between his words. There's no excitement there. And these guys apparently just did the greatest achievement of all time. So if you go back and check out Buzz Aldrin in that clip, and then just keep that in mind as we keep moving forward. Because like I said, Buzz became the guy. And, well, there's a little screenshot of what I'm talking about, but it's much clearer if you go back and look at the clip. The reason why I think Buzz Aldrin became the guy is because, as you can see here, he's got a bit of showman about him. He's got a bit of ego, and ego isn't necessarily always a bad thing, right? I think the word ego kind of gets thrown around in like a bad context, but it's not always the case. It's just like your front, right? And he had a lot of that. And I think if you are really burying something that is a truth from the American public, that is a lie, I think it takes a big front, big set of shoulders, a big ego to be able to hold on to that and be this guy. And I don't think Neil Armstrong was that guy. And I think that's evident in that clip. And it's evident in another clip that we're going to look at soon. So, or the other option is, and I don't know about this, but this is just a theory that I've seen floating around, is that these guys just got like MK Ultra'd their brains into a smoothie, that he actually did go to the moon, and maybe, I don't know, Neil Armstrong's just depressed or something. I don't know. But that is just a theory I've seen floating around. But look, if Buzz Aldrin did actually go to the moon, why would you react like this?
Why don't you swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon?
Please? Yeah.
Why don't you swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon?
I'm not trying to get in the middle of anything.
to get
but
out of
this
here?
This is a hotel.
We'll call
Right,
the police.
You cannot
We pay-
solicit. It doesn't
Come
matter.
on
You
in
cannot-
here, we'll call the
you cannot
police.
solicit
You like that?
Why don't you swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon?
It doesn't, sir. I don't have nothing to do with this. But
Okay.
you cannot solicit on this property.
We just paid
now,
to rent out the penthouse to shoot up there. So
you can't solicit like this on this property.
keep shooting.
All right. Well, then I'd go through my measures.
You got to keep shooting, man. Okay. Well, you can put it on your shoulder. Don't be shy.
Just come with me, Buzz.
You really like attention, don't you?
You're the one who said you walked on the moon when you didn't. Calling the kettle black, if I ever thought of it. Saying I misrepresented myself.
Away from me.
You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
Boom. He's got a good right hand for an old fella. Fair play to him. But look, weird reaction, right? If you're telling the truth, if you know that you landed on the moon and some weird guy is trying to tell you to swear on the Bible and say that you didn't go on the moon, I'd find that kind of comical. Like, I'd just be like, dude, like, are you okay? Yes, I'll swear on the Bible if that makes you happy. Like, if you know that truth, why would that bother you? But look, that guy that we looked at there who got punched by Buzz Aldrin, his name's Bart Sibrel, or Sibrel, and we're going to be looking at a bit of his work through this video today. And I will just say now that he kind of comes with his own little nuances that we'll talk about in a moment. But he has done a lot of work on this topic. Now, Buzz Aldrin wasn't the only one to react like that. So this is a little bit more of from a movie that Bart Sibrel has done. I'll show you the clip and we'll talk about it a little bit more after that.
You want me to knock you in the head?
Well, I want you to swear to
Get
God
away
on the
from me.
Bible that you
Get
walked
away
on the
from
moon.
me.
Okay.
If you walked on the moon, we're given the opportunity to swear to God that you walked on the moon.
I'm going to give you the opportunity to get the hell knocked out of you if you don't leave me alone.
So why don't you just put the end to the record in the argument and put your hand on the Bible, swear to God you walked on the moon.
Mr. Sibrel, knowing you, that's probably a fake Bible.
Well,
Take your stuff and get the fuck out. Why don't you quote me and say it's bullshit?
The shadows in the wrong place. I don't give a damn about all that shit.
You're full of shit.
Of lunar orbit being falsified.
Being falsified?
Correct. We got an unedited tape from a source at the Johnson Space Center.
Totally nonsense.
Mr. Sibrel, you do not deserve answers.
If you show this publicly, you're open for a lawsuit. Okay?
A lot of angry astronauts there reacting pretty aggressively when they're being questioned about the moon landing. Now, just quickly, the little clip there of Neil Armstrong, like I said, I don't know why. When I listen to him at the Apollo conference and I see him there being questioned, 40 years later, I don't know. It's just something that like weighs on my chest heavy. And I feel like a sense of sadness for him. Like he just looks sad. And I feel like empathy for him. I feel like he didn't really want this. I don't know. He could just be like a pretty solemn, melancholic kind of guy, maybe. I don't know, because he doesn't give interviews, which is weird because he's the first man on the moon. But I don't know. There's just something about Neil Armstrong. Anyway, those clips are all from a movie by Bart Sibrel called Astronauts Gone Wild. I'll make sure I leave a link to it in the description because it's free to watch on YouTube and it's interesting. But I want to, like I said, there are some nuances there with Bart Sibrel himself. And I think in most of those clips, he's kind of seems like he's just catching people in public. But we're going to be looking at a few more clips as well where he has actually organized interviews with these astronauts, the ones who are part of the Apollo program and allegedly landed on the moon. And it does seem that he has organized these interviews under like a false pretense. Like he's organized these interviews perhaps with telling these people that he is just like an investigative journalist looking to make a story about the moon landing. And then once he has them on camera, he starts steering the conversation and asking them some hard questions. So I can understand why that may catch people off guard and bother people because they've essentially been duped and tricked. But also, if you're telling the truth, I personally would just be like, wait, what is going on here? Like, you actually think we didn't go to the moon? Like, but instead they get very upset, and we're gonna look at more of that. So, yeah, I can understand them feeling misled or undermined. But before that clip that we looked at of Buzz Aldrin punching Bart Sibrel, there's actually a bit of history there, because in these setup style interviews that Bart had conducted for that movie, he did one with Buzz Aldrin. This is before he got punched in the face by him. And yeah, he basically put him on the spot and offered to get him to watch some footage, and Buzz didn't like it.
I mean, do you have Neil Armstrong interviewed already?
No, he doesn't want to be interviewed.
Well, I know.
Why does he not give interviews?
Well, because that's his personal choice. And I guess it's mine, in a way, to do things when they've been researched and worked out as far as a business arrangement. This is not news. This is not an anniversary.
Well, actually it is. We found a very unique reel of footage that we have queued up to show you.
Yeah.
And it's from the mission. And to our knowledge, no one has ever seen it before. Mm. And it's 30 years old.
And you want me to see this while you have me on camera?
Well, and to tell us what it is. I mean, it's...
Well, I don't know why I should do that.
It's a very unique footage.
It may be that I need to see it, and then we sit down and we talk about what you're taking a picture of. I don't see where there's an advantage in it for me to do what you're asking me to do. I see all sorts of pitfalls.
I think when you see the footage, you'll see that it's very extraordinary, one of a kind, behind the scenes type of footage.
Yeah. Well, if it is, why do you have access to something that no one else has seen before?
Serendipity, I guess.
So to me, like, the reactions just don't add up to someone who has nothing to hide. He's talking about like potential pitfalls and traps. And when Bart Sibrel says it's kind of behind the scenes footage, Buzz kind of leans in. He's like, well, how do you have that? And I'm going to show you the footage that Bart showed Buzz in that clip. We're going to be looking at that a little bit later. But first, among all the astronauts that Bart interviewed for this movie, aside from being punched, one of them actually threatened to kill him.
Put your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand, and say, I, Edgar Mitchell.
I, Edgar Mitchell.
Affirm.
Affirm.
Under penalty of eternal damnation.
I don't believe in that, but penalty of eternal damnation.
That I walked on the moon on Apollo 14.
That I walked on the moon on Apollo 14.
Well, you know, you're the first astronaut to do that. We asked 6 other astronauts to swear on the Bible, and they refused to do it.
Well, I don't particularly like to take oaths like that either, because I don't accept the Bible as a gospel of anything except a historical record. But we did go to the moon. You bet your sweet ass we went to the moon. Okay, turn off the camera. Your interview is done. I've given you all the time I'm going to give you.
Okie dokie. Good to meet you.
I don't say it's a pleasure.
Understand.
Please get your ass out of my house.
Okay.
And you came here under false pretenses, and I think you're an asshole.
Well,
and if you continue this, and if you press us, I will personally take you to court.
I hope that you do. I invite you to. I'm going to give you my card so you can arrange that. And I'm encouraging you to arrange.
You're frankly not worth it.
No. We have you on the record saying you'll take me to court. I hope you do. Because we have proof that would prove it in a court of law that Apollo 11 didn't go to the moon. And I think it's something that you should see. I don't say that lightly, believe me. I don't say it lightly.
You have joking, sir. People can have fun. And maybe do that if they feel like they want to have a little fun on a trip to the moon. And as an independent producer,
okay, we're heading out.
Doing that is against moral ethics.
Lying about going to the moon is a satanic lie of gigantic proportions.
I don't hit people, but you're going to be on the deck unless you get...
I'm heading out. I appreciate it.
And get the hell out of my house.
You're going to get a gun and shoot them at them before they get out of the office?
We have a video camera running if you want to do it.
Right.
That would be great footage for us. See you later. In court, I hope.
Want to call the CIA? Have them whacked?
Okay. Before we analyze that clip, I have to say Bart Sibrel reminds me, he does great investigative work, but like on a night out, he's like the guy who like can't fight or defend himself, but will go up to like a whole bunch of dudes that are like 6'5" and be a smartass to them. That's the kind of personality I get from him. Okay. Now, again, weird reactions. First of all, if you actually went to the moon, he's getting so riled up that he rammed his knee up Bart's ass, apparently, and then threatens to get a gun. Well, he asks his son, should I get a gun and shoot him? That's quite intense. Maybe it's not if you're American. I don't know if that's a bit more normal over there. It's definitely not normal here. Okay, we don't have guns. So to me, that's like quite extreme to threaten to kill someone for that. But then, okay, so they were using a wireless microphone. It was annotated on the footage there. They left a wireless microphone inside. Bart and his crew got in the car, and in the recording, which Bart didn't notice, it's in the movie, he explains it, but he didn't find it till months later that after they'd left, Edgar Mitchell and his son went back inside, the son says, should I call the CIA and get him whacked? Which is kind of, and he sounds serious, right? I mean, like, I don't know. I feel like you wouldn't say something that you can't actually do in that situation, especially like to your dad. I don't know. Like if it is true, why does an astronaut's son have a contact at the CIA? Astronauts are like a civilian job, right? It's not military. They're not connected with the intelligence. It's a civilian job. And even if he did, why would the CIA be interested in trying to, well, why would they want to kill an American citizen full stop? But especially some random one who's just lost his mind saying that the moon landing is fake. Well, I don't know, maybe because it was. And like I said, we have the deathbed confession from someone admitting that as well. So we're going to get to that towards the end. But up next, we're going to do the image and footage analysis, okay? Because, well, there's the AI thing, which is very interesting, but I wanted to do my own, okay? So we've got a photo and we've got a little bit of footage to look at as well. So this photo here is, again, kind of like the main image that Bart uses in his work to determine the fact that it's all a hoax, right? And he says that because we've got intersecting shadows here. We've got one shadow coming straight up, and on that rock there, the shadow is coming that way. Now, when you've got a singular light source, I mean, go stand outside in the sunset, you're going to get one shadow cast in one direction because that's where the sun is coming from. Something like this would need to be done with studio lights or multiple light sources, one that's casting a shadow that way, one that's casting a shadow that way. Now, when I first saw this, to me, this wasn't strong evidence because I thought, look, if you have a really wide angle lens, like a GoPro, obviously it's not a GoPro, but that's an example, a very wide angle lens, you can get that rounding stretched effect on the image, and it can look like the shadows are doing that because that's what a wide angle lens does, right? Then I found this because I couldn't find where this photo is actually from. So this is actually from Apollo 17. Like I said earlier, one of the many others that apparently went to the moon after Apollo 11. This is from Apollo 17. And I found it on the LPI, which was like the lunar, oh God, I can't remember, but that's the website. You can go and check it out yourself. It's shot with a 60mm lens. That is very far from being a wide angle lens. A wide angle lens is like under 20mm. Pretty much anything under like 18-20mm would be considered wide. I would feel like to get that kind of dramatic effect, you'd be talking like a 12mm lens, I think, personally. 60mm is like a zoom lens. That's like the opposite, the complete opposite. So when I found this, I thought that was quite shocking. And people would say, okay, if it's a studio light though, you know, wouldn't the light that's being shined this way be kind of removing this shadow or at least dulling it a little bit because there's going to be light penetrating the shadow, right? So it's not going to be as dark, which is a fair question. And yes, it would. But there are ways that you can kind of close off. Like you see those studio lights that have like those flaps on the light. That's just one example, but there are many more. So again, it's a very interesting image. I don't think it's like concrete conclusive because there are ways around it, but it's just part of the evidence that we've got here. So let's now look at a little montage. Okay, this is some footage from Apollo 11, the original moon landing. as well as a little bit of other footage from the subsequent missions that happened after that. So check this out.
Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot. Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
I just want to pause quickly and say this is the Apollo 11. This is the original footage, okay? Very grainy, which I think would make it a bit easier to fake.
I'm at the foot of the ladder. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Nice cinematic zoom.
I believe it, Charlie. It's raining, John. Okay, let's go, would you, Charlie? You got all your steering. It's great. Hippity hoppity, hippity hoppity, hippity hopping over hill and dale. Da 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 da. Hippity hopping along. One ignition. Flat away, Houston. Vector good. We're burning flat. Thanks, flat. Looks good, flat.
I don't know about that. So those shots of, let me just get this out of the way. Those shots of them driving in the lunar rover was obviously not the original mission. Subsequent ones where they brought the rover with them, apparently. I just wanted to make that clear. And then again, subsequent mission where they shot the lunar shuttle, where they took off from the moon. That was apparently done with a remote control to like time the camera to pan up and follow it up as it took off. I mean, again, this is all done with things that are less powerful than a calculator. And I mean, just the whole takeoff looks weird too. But again, we've never been to space. We don't know what zero gravity is like. So, you know, we can't say, oh, that doesn't look right because we're talking about conditions that we've never been to. So I'm aware of that. But it still just looks weird. And we're going to get to more of it. Okay, we've got a little bit more footage here. Let's check this one out.
What's this deal, cube? Yes? Okay?
Sorry, I should just say quickly, this is Apollo 14. All of this footage is Apollo 14, and it was interpolated. So originally shot at 12 FPS, but using modern technology, it's been pushed to 24. Okay, so that's why it's going to look a bit better than the previous footage.
Give me a mark. Rocket's ready. Roger out. Does this, Bruce? Look okay? Roger, that's a good sight.
Okay, look, I just want to say quickly, right? The whole why is the flag waving in space thing, that was like the original hook that made me a conspiracy theorist. Okay, that was like the seed that just went, wow, what is actually going on here? Now, people claim that, you know, when you move things in gravity, they still continue to move and have a ripple effect, which, yes, I understand that. But if you watch the flag closely here, it does movements where the stimulus for that movement is unknown. It's not clear. It seems to literally be waving on its own. So just keep an eye on the actual flag and the way it's rippling, and you'll see flicks and movements that could only be possible by like a wind or some kind of extra force being generated.
You're going off camera to the right.
Interesting, right? Look, I know there's probably going to be people out there that are going to be trying to debunk me in the comments. I'm open to hearing it. Like I said, I've never been to space, so I don't actually know. But when I look at it, something doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right. I think the flag waving stuff is weird. And something else that's actually interesting is it seems like they're using the same game engine as old school RuneScape because they seem to be having the same render distance issues as well. right? You guys know I like RuneScape. So this is this is obviously a bit of a joke, but I'm going to give some data as to why I'm bringing this up, okay? The moon is roughly, no, not roughly, it is 2,159 miles wide, or if you don't live in America, it's 3,474 kilometers wide. So it is almost as wide as Australia, and it's not quite as wide as the United States, but that's a pretty accurate representation of how big they are compared to those countries, okay? It is a large land mass. Now, of course, there's going to be curvature. So you're going to, eventually the curvature means you're not going to be able to see beyond that. However, the human eye, let me just move over a little bit. The human eye can see roughly 3 miles or 5 kilometers on a clear day on Earth through the Earth's atmosphere. 3 miles, 5 kilometers. Look at the shadows in this bottom one here. Like, the astronaut's shadow nearly hits the edge of the moon. And, like where this one where he's bouncing around up here, that looks like 10 meters to me. Maybe 20 meters. It's definitely not even half a kilometer, let alone 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Okay. And again, I understand that there's curvature, but look how big the moon is compared to these whole countries. And you're telling me that's where the moon curves? Just there? I don't know. I'm not buying that. And, you would think the moon doesn't have an atmosphere. And the atmosphere, like the atmospheric haze, is a limitation in our sight. That's why we can't see further, is the atmosphere. So realistically, you should be able to see all the way until it does curve, which, would be like seeing across states if we use the United States as an example. Also, no stars. Why can't we see any stars? Now, I know that there are people that say, oh, the iris on their camera, they had to adjust the iris. So I can't prove that. I'm just not buying that. I just think that's so weak. I feel like at least one photo, like fair enough, maybe to film, it was better to do that. But where is the one photo of all the stars being visible from space? I feel like a photo of the astronauts on the moon with the stars in the background and Earth in the background would have been like the most iconic and obvious photo of all time. Doesn't exist though. Again, these are just theories. I'm not laying this out as hard proof. This is just me kind of telling you my thoughts as I interpret this. So, don't take this as gospel. Definitely make up your own mind, do your own research, argue in the comments with me if you think I'm an idiot, but I'm just telling you my thoughts, okay? All right. Let's look at the video now, okay? Let's look at the AI video it's a real video of Vladimir Putin being shown at the 2023 International AI Summit. Here we are. This is a 2023 AI Summit. It's like an international convention, I guess, about the breakthroughs and power of AI. And these people here are showing an analysis that was done by Google's neural network. So that kind of comprises of like Gemini, and, the neural network is kind of like the power behind the, ChatGPT, Gemini, or whatever they're called. The neural network is like the power behind it. And you would think, if anything, that they would have like a bias towards America being like a Google product. But as all AI should be, there is meant to be no bias. And there certainly doesn't seem like there was one here. So this is the specific photo that they analyzed, and you can kind of see it if you look at what they're looking at in the video. So I'll stop yapping now and just show you guys the clip.
То есть почти все объекты на этом фото ей кажутся ненастоящими. В то же время вот фотография китайского лунохода у нее особенных вопросов не вызывает.
А это то, что кажется не настоящим?
Да, вот то, что красное.
Это сетка гугловская, не наша. Так, чтобы не было предвзятости никакой. Удивительно, но там точно вот... она смотрит по очень много параметров, в том числе там, падение светотеней и так далее, и показывает, что инкорпорировано в фотографию.
It's interesting, right? Putin doesn't look surprised. He just goes, very interesting. Now, I just want to replay that quickly and I'll just pause it on the bit so you can see, because I feel like it's kind of easy to miss. So if we just here, so you can see there in that little bit of red is that photo. Actually, you know what? No, I'm pretty sure it is that photo that I have here. I'm pretty certain. If not, it's a very similar one. Actually, I think it's a slightly different photo. That's my bad. I thought it was that one, but you get the idea, right? All of the areas in red, as they say, the AI is suggesting this does not look authentic. This is not how realistic lighting should appear in an image. That's generally the consensus that it's coming to. Now, Putin's unsurprised reaction. Bart Sibrel suggests that it's because it's actually, people say, well, why wouldn't China or Russia expose this? They're the enemies. Why wouldn't they just out them for it? And by the way, in that clip, they're saying it was compared to China's moon rover. So they've landed a rover on the moon that took photos, and it said that they all seem legit, but not that one. Now, Bart suggests that China and Russia, they all know that the moon landing's fake, but it's rather than just exposing America and being like, ha, this enables blackmail. This enables blackmail on a broader scale where they can, I guess, get technology, innovation from America in exchange for helping them maintain this secret. And that makes a lot of sense. And, it could tie into other things that we've spoken about on this channel about, if the West is in a heavy decline, which it seems like it is, I think it makes a lot of sense that could be because it's built on a lot of lies. The truth always comes out, right? And the truth always has to come out. Something that is built on lies will only survive for so long until it begins to crumble. Seems like we could be built on a house of cards here. That's just me throwing theories out there. Don't take that too seriously. Do your own research. Now, we're moving through this quickly. It's good. So next up, we're going to look at the times where NASA themselves have literally slipped up. So remember earlier we looked at the clip of Buzz Aldrin looking very uncomfortable as he was interviewed by Bart Sibrel, and Bart was saying that he had some footage to show him. These are some shots from that footage. I'm going to show the clip, but it's the famous shots of, I think there's actually a name for this, like blue marble or something like that. I could be wrong, but these are the famous shots of Earth looking like a blue marble in space, okay? And the footage that Bart shows, this is the behind the scenes style footage that he doesn't disclose how he actually got. But if you look at his documentaries, which I'll link in the description, he does say that basically insiders, people who know that this isn't real, are the people funding him, and that's maybe how he got these clips. That they're trying to push him to get this out there because they don't want to do it themselves. That's his words, not mine. So I'm going to show you this clip, but rather than just show you the clip, I've got a clip of Bart actually explaining it and doing a couple of side-by-side comparisons and showing you what's actually going on. So check this out.
Roger, Houston, Apollo 11. Calling in from about 130,000 miles out.
Here.
Okay, so he's claiming that this is 130,000 miles out. That's what he's claiming. And then he's claiming here, the lens is right up against the window, which it would have to be. Okay, so if you're halfway to the moon, and this is the Earth, behind you, right? Then you're going to have that lens right up against the glass.
We only have one window that has a view of the Earth, and it's filled up with the TV camera.
Okay, so Neil Armstrong just said they only had one view of the Earth. It's filled up with the TV camera, meaning the lens is right up against that glass to shoot that tiny Earth far away. Here is the actual location of the camera, right? Remember, this is the very same shot that he said a moment ago was the Earth, floating in space. So this is the Earth floating in space. He just said this was the Earth floating in space. But this is the part they thought wasn't being recorded and never to be broadcast. This is the unedited reel. This is a work light inside of the spacecraft here. Either that or it's a giant UFO, right? Floating around the Earth, right? And now you're going to see them remove part of the crescent insert and the photograph in front of the window. That's Buzz Aldrin doing that right there. Faking it. They also say this is the way 10 did it. Apollo 10 faked it the same way. And then you're going to see the real location of the Earth and the window. And the window is actually, that's the window right there. So all the time, this was the window of the spacecraft. See how bright the Earth is? This is Earth shine. They're in Earth orbit, right? They just said that this shot, you know, was 130,000 miles away from the Earth, right? And yet, which in fact we can take a look at them side by side here. Here's the wide shot, and then here he is saying he's, you know, halfway to the moon or 130,000 miles out.
Roger, Houston, Apollo 11. Calling in from about 130,000 miles out.
Okay, so that's supposed to be the Earth floating in space. Now let's take a look at it over here, right? And let's take a look at it. Okay, so to the right is 130,000 miles out, according to NASA and Neil Armstrong, right? That's the Earth over there on the right. But wait a minute, it's not. It's the window. They're using a 1 foot diameter circular photograph of the Earth, putting it on top of the circular window. And now here they are breaking down the shot, the photograph, in order to get ready for an interior showing the astronauts. You know what I mean? So there they are. There's proof right there that it's a fake shot. Here's even an outtake here when an astronaut's arm gets in front of the window. Look at this. Oh my goodness. So if that's really the Earth floating in space, that must be the arm of God going right in front of it. Oh my goodness.
So that's what was shown to Buzz Aldrin and Edgar Mitchell by Bart Sabrouille trying to film their reactions, and one of them eventually punched him in the face, and the other threatened to get a gun while his son offered to call the CIA and get him taken out. What do you guys think about that? I feel like it kind of, I don't know. So I want to pass the mic over to you. Let me know in the comments, are their reactions justified from men who are apparently telling the truth? Or if you were telling the truth, would you react that way if someone set up an interview with you to try and make it out like you were lying? Let me know what you think in the comments. Next person we're going to look at here is Don Pettit, who is a NASA astronaut. Now, I think we've all heard this eye roll excuse that we destroyed the technology that we used to go to the moon, so that's why we can't go back. Now, I don't know if Don Pettit is the actual original source of that claim and where it came from, but I'm sure we've all heard it before, right? And at the very least, I was able to find a clip of this NASA astronaut making that claim himself.
Go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
Now, in that video, Don Pettit is giving the same energy as people on Love on the Spectrum when they go on a first date. Highly nervous, highly awkward, highly uncomfortable, and doing a terrible job at masking any of it. And that is potentially because he actually is on the spectrum, like a lot of extremely intelligent people are. And he's also in a position where he has to say something on camera that he knows isn't true. That's just pure speculation on my behalf. I'm just reading. I don't know Don Pettit. I know Don Pettit from a 6-second clip that I just showed you. But I'm just kind of reading the vibe that I'm getting there. Okay. He looks very uncomfortable. He's obviously a very intelligent man. He's an astronaut. He looks very uncomfortable saying that, though. Very, you know, why isn't an apparently intelligent man saying something so absolutely absurd, like we destroyed technology that took us to the moon? Why? Who does that? And why does he look so uncomfortable saying it? You know, no one just destroys things without having like a newer version of it, or even just to keep, you know, you keep it in an archive. Like that's just basic organizational skills of any semi-functioning business or company, right? That's just, you know, it's the stupidest excuse I've ever heard. I mean, if calculator levels of computing power put us on the moon, and that was cutting edge at the time, surely now, if we did destroy it, surely like a uni student could just rewrite at least whatever they did, you know, that type of tech. I mean, at now, I feel like a uni student could probably just replicate that for an assignment, given our technological advancements and growth of knowledge. I could be wrong there. I'm always open to being wrong, but, you know, just things aren't adding up to me. So now we've got the Deathbed Confession. Now, this is a 15-minute video. I'll leave it linked below. We're not going to watch the whole thing now, but I've cut it up to just tell the story concisely for you, so you kind of get the idea of what's going on. So this is a story of a former chief of security at Cannon Air Force Base in New Mexico, where moon landing was allegedly filmed a year prior to 1969. And this person confessed to his participation in the moon landing videos, and he lists the only people that were actually allowed in and essentially allowed to know about it. Check this out.
I don't want any money for what I'm doing because hopefully this video won't come out until after my death. So I have nothing to gain, nothing to profit by telling you what I'm going to tell you. In 1968, my father was stationed at Cannon Air Force Base in New Mexico. He said by the time he got there, that there was already 2 large hangars that were connected. There was hundreds of dump trucks that came in and dumped sand and stone, and cement powder was powdered over the top of all that to make it look like a lunar landscape. They had men that fashioned it into a lunar landscape, he said. Inside the staging area, on flatbed trucks, was uncrated the lunar lander that was reassembled back inside the hangars. All of the walls were painted flat black, and the ceilings as well. When Dad saw the moon landing on TV, he cried. He said he knew that what he had witnessed on TV was exactly what they recorded in that hangar. I've never known my dad to lie. To get caught lying was worse than whatever it was you did to begin with. He was sworn to secrecy by the NSA, and they would put him in prison for breaking that oath. People broke into my house 2 times. I was visited by men with black suits, and I was told in no uncertain terms to drop this whole project, not to say anymore to anybody, or me and my wife and my son could disappear. There was a list of 15 people who could enter. No one else was allowed by order of President Johnson. President Johnson, Neil Armstrong, Edwin Aldrin, Werner von Braun, Robert Emenegger, Gene Kranz, James Webb, Joe Kerwin, Dr. Thomas Paine, Glenn Looney, Dr. Christopher Kraft, Dr. James Van Allen, General Trudeau, Lieutenant Colonel Donald Simon, and Grant Norrie. I just want somebody to pick up where I left off and be able to prove with the information I've given. I know he didn't lie to me. And as I started seeing more and more of what he was telling me was true, I realized my dad wasn't lying.
Now, of course, that's all anecdotal. There's no hard evidence there. But you have to ask why. Why would someone want to undermine their own country with such a deathbed confession if it wasn't true? Now, I'm sure someone out there will come up with a reason. I'm sure there'll be someone in the comments telling me why. And fair enough. But when we stack whatever your reason is up against that confession and everything else that we've looked at in the video today, how does your reason hold up? What out of the 2 options there begins to make a bit more sense to you? Personally, my opinion, which I'm happy to give, because, you know, it's just my opinion, right? I'm not telling you this is true. This is just what I think. I encourage you to make up your own mind and let me know in the comments. But what I think is, at the very least, I think it's clear that the footage that we have seen on the moon of the moon landing is not the moon. In my opinion, I think the footage is a hoax. Does that mean we didn't go to the moon? Maybe. Maybe with our computers that were as powerful as a calculator, maybe we were just able to get there and back. But to bring all of the equipment to film it and live stream it was just too much. So they faked it, just to prove that they actually did it. Maybe. But why haven't we gone back since then? with how much better technology has gotten now, why did the Challenger space shuttle explode 73 seconds after liftoff on live television in 1986, killing all 7 crew members on board? We apparently went to the moon nearly 20 years before that. 9 times, remember, 9 times we got to the moon. 20 years before that. Surely we would have at least mastered getting into orbit. Apparently not. And since then, we've been told that we are going back to the moon 3 times. Every single one of them has been cancelled or consistently postponed. You would think, with all the talk about Mars, that the moon is like a perfect stop-off on the way to Mars. Both W and H.W. Bush thought so, 1989 and 2004, but they eventually got cancelled. Elon doesn't seem to care for the moon. I wonder why. Did we see things there that made us not want to go back? Did we learn some strange truths about the moon that made us not want to go back? Did something tell us not to go back? What do you think? I look forward to seeing what you guys have to say about this. Now, again, if you have an opposing opinion, that's all good. I welcome it. But it's all about how you say it, okay? I don't need any dickheads in the comments. So guys, if you learned something today and you enjoyed the video, use the code word Artemis in the comments so I know that you're one of the real ones who stayed all the way through. And again, if you haven't subscribed, please do like the video, share it around. And if you'd like to support me even further, you can become a member of the channel, gain access to extra members-only content, sweet little badges next to your name, and you directly support me as well for $5 a month. So stay grounded out there, team. It is a wild world. Make sure you're touching grass every day. We don't want to lose you down the rabbit hole. Be good, be kind. I'll see you next time.
Eventually, people are going to say, what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light in our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.